The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the fleet of the United Terran Coalition. Stars glittered like tiny diamonds, illuminating the darkness as if holding secrets of their own. At the center of this tableau was the flagship of the fleet, the UTS Resolution. Commanded by Captain Patrick O'Brien, the Resolution was a symbol of humanity's perseverance and determination, an embodiment of the Coalition's resolve to survive against overwhelming odds. The bridge of the Resolution was a hive of activity. Officers moved from station to station, monitoring incoming data, issuing commands, and preparing for the monumental task ahead. The tension in the air was palpable as the final preparations for Operation Epsilon Prime reached their conclusion. O'Brien stood at the center of the bridge, his sharp gaze fixed on the tactical map hovering in the air before him. The map displayed the Navarra sector and the surrounding systems, the critical choke points, and the enemy's positions. The plan was audacious, even by his standards, but the stakes were too high for anything less. "Status report," O'Brien said, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Mallory, his trusted tactical officer, stepped forward. "All units are in position, Captain. Battle Groups 17 and 19 are holding their positions in the asteroid fields. The stealth team is en route to Torvalis and should reach the refinery within the hour." O'Brien nodded.
"Good."
"And the enemy?" Commander Vasquez, the Coalition's intelligence liaison, responded. "Their fleet at Epsilon Prime remains static for now. They've reinforced their orbital defenses and deployed additional ground troops, but they've shown no signs of mobilizing their main fleet." O'Brien's brow furrowed. "They're waiting for us to make the first move. Let's not disappoint them. Begin Phase 1. The order set the operation in motion. In the Navarra sector, Battle Groups 17 and 19 initiated their feint. Using the asteroid fields as cover, they simulated a large-scale engagement, transmitting false signals to create the illusion of a full-scale assault. The goal was to draw the enemy's attention and force them to redeploy their fleet, leaving Epsilon Prime vulnerable. The ruse worked. Within minutes, the enemy fleet began to mobilize, redirecting ships to the Navarra sector. On board the Resolution, O'Brien watched the tactical map as enemy vessels moved into the trap. His plan was unfolding as intended, but the most critical phases were yet to come. The stealth team's vessel, the Shadowhawk, approached the orbital refinery at Torvalis under the cover of a cloaking field. The refinery was a massive structure, its spindly arms reaching out like a metallic spiderweb. It hovered in geosynchronous orbit above the planet, processing raw materials and fueling the enemy's war machine. Lieutenant Alaric Kane led the team, his sharp eyes scanning the refinery as the Shadowhawk closed the distance. "We have one shot at this," he said, addressing his team. "We disable the refinery and we cripple their supply lines." No mistakes. The team nodded in unison, their determination evident. Each member had been handpicked for their expertise: engineers, demolitions experts, and infiltration specialists. They moved with precision, exiting the Shadowhawk and entering the refinery through an unmanned maintenance hatch. Inside, the refinery was a labyrinth of pipes, conduits, and machinery. The air was thick with the smell of industrial chemicals, and the hum of machinery echoed through the corridors. The team split into pairs, each tasked with planting charges at critical points in the refinery's infrastructure. Kane and Sergeant Dara Holt navigated the maze-like interior, their movements silent and efficient. They reached their target, a massive power relay that distributed energy throughout the refinery. Kane placed the charges while Holt kept watch, her weapon at the ready. "Charges set," Kane said quietly. Moving to the next point. As the team completed their tasks, the Shadowhawk's pilot monitored the enemy's activity from orbit. "No signs of detection," the pilot reported. "We're still clear." Kane acknowledged the report and signaled the team to regroup. Within minutes, they were back on the Shadowhawk, their mission complete. Kane activated the detonator, and the refinery erupted in a series of controlled explosions. The blasts crippled the structure, sending debris spiraling into the planet's atmosphere. The enemy's supply line was severed. Back at Epsilon Prime, the enemy's defenses began to falter. With their supply line disrupted and their fleet distracted, the Coalition's forces launched their assault. The Resolution led the charge, its powerful weapons systems tearing through the enemy's orbital defenses. O'Brien coordinated the attack from the bridge, his commands precise and unwavering. "Target their orbital cannons first," he ordered. "We need to clear the way for the ground forces." The Coalition's ships moved with precision, their coordinated strikes overwhelming the enemy's defenses. The orbital cannons were destroyed one by one, and the path to Epsilon Prime was secured. On the planet's surface, Coalition ground forces engaged the enemy's troops. The fighting was intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. But the Coalition soldiers were determined, their resolve unshaken. They pushed forward, capturing key positions and securing the planet's vital infrastructure. As the battle raged on, O'Brien received a transmission from Commander Vasquez. "Captain, we've intercepted enemy communications. They're calling for reinforcements from their remaining fleet." O'Brien's jaw tightened. "How long until they arrive?" "Approximately 3 hours," Vasquez replied. "We need to finish this before they get here." O'Brien nodded. "Understood. Inform the ground forces to expedite their operations. We need to secure Epsilon Prime and prepare for their counterattack." The Coalition's forces redoubled their efforts, pushing the enemy back and solidifying their control of the planet. The battle was far from over, but O'Brien knew they had gained the upper hand. The success of Operation Epsilon Prime was a turning point in the war, a testament to humanity's resilience and determination. As the enemy's reinforcements drew closer, O'Brien stood on the bridge of the Resolution, his gaze fixed on the stars. The fight for Epsilon Prime was just the beginning. The war would continue, but so would humanity's fight for survival. And as long as he had anything to say about it, the Coalition would stand strong, united in the face of any challenge. The battle for Epsilon Prime raged on, with the Coalition forces gaining ground but still facing pockets of fierce resistance. Captain Patrick O'Brien, aboard the UTS Resolution, watched the tactical display closely, his mind racing to calculate the next move. Every second counted, and every decision could mean the difference between victory and devastating loss. "Lieutenant Commander Mallory," O'Brien called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Status on our ground forces?" Mallory's fingers flew across her console as she pulled up the latest reports. "Ground forces are advancing, Captain. They've secured the eastern sector and are pushing toward the central command hub. Resistance is heavy, but they're holding." "Good," O'Brien said. "And the orbital situation?" "Enemy reinforcements are 2 hours out," Mallory replied. "We're holding the upper hand in orbit for now, but they're throwing everything they've got at us. The longer this drags on, the harder it will be to maintain our position." O'Brien nodded, his mind racing. They couldn't afford to let the battle drag on. The key to victory was swift, decisive action. He turned to Commander Vasquez. "What's the status of the enemy's communications network?" Vasquez glanced at her console. "We've managed to disrupt their primary communication relays, but they're working on rerouting through secondary channels. If we can take out their central hub on the surface, it'll cripple their coordination." O'Brien's eyes narrowed. "Then that's our priority. Inform the ground forces to focus their efforts on the central hub. Mallory, have the aerial units provide cover for their advance." "Captain," Mallory said, relaying the orders. On the surface of Epsilon Prime, the Coalition ground forces were locked in intense combat. The terrain was rugged and unforgiving, with jagged cliffs and dense forests providing natural cover for both sides. The central command hub loomed in the distance, a massive structure fortified with heavy defenses. Colonel James Carter, leading the ground assault, crouched behind a pile of rubble as enemy fire rained down around him. His soldiers were pinned, unable to advance, without risking heavy casualties. "Captain O'Brien wants that hub taken out, and we're going to deliver," Carter said, his voice calm but firm. He turned to his second-in-command, Major Elena Torres. "Get me a line to the aerial units. We need a precision strike on those turrets." Torres nodded, quickly relaying the request. Moments later, a squadron of Coalition gunships roared overhead, their weapons blazing. The turrets guarding the command hub exploded in fiery bursts, clearing the way for the ground forces. Move out, Carter shouted, leading his troops forward. The soldiers surged ahead, their determination unwavering despite the relentless enemy fire. As they closed in on the hub, Carter's comm unit crackled to life. "Colonel, this is Major Lorne. We've secured the western approach and are ready to converge on the hub from the flank." "Good work, Major," Carter replied. "Coordinate with Alpha Team and hit them hard. We'll keep pushing from the front." The coalition forces pressed on, their combined assault overwhelming the enemy defenses. Inside the command hub, the enemy officers scrambled to maintain control, but it was clear their position was untenable. Back on the Resolution, O'Brien watched the tactical display as the ground forces breached the command hub. The enemy's icons began to fade from the map, one by one. "Captain, the central hub is neutralized," Mallory reported. "Their coordination is falling apart." O'Brien allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. "Excellent work. Inform Colonel Carter to secure the area and prepare for extraction. And let's keep an eye on those reinforcements. I want our fleet ready to intercept." As the coalition forces consolidated their hold on Epsilon Prime, the enemy fleet approached the system. O'Brien knew the final phase of the battle was about to begin. "Commander Vasquez, status on our fleet readiness?" O'Brien asked. "All ships are in position, Captain," Vasquez replied. "We've reinforced our flanks and optimized our firing solutions. If the enemy tries to break through, they'll regret it." O'Brien nodded. "Good. Let's finish this. All units, prepare for engagement." The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace, a massive armada bristling with firepower. But the coalition was ready. As the enemy ships closed in, the Resolution and its allies unleashed a devastating volley of firepower, lighting up the void with bursts of energy. The two fleets clashed in a brutal engagement, each side fighting with everything they had. The Resolution's crew worked tirelessly, coordinating strikes, reinforcing shields, and adapting to the enemy's tactics. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire on the port side," Mallory reported. "Shields are holding, but we can't sustain this for long. Redirect power to the shields and focus fire on their lead destroyer," O'Brien ordered. "Take out their command ship, and the rest will falter." The Resolution's weapons locked onto the enemy destroyer, its powerful cannons tearing through the ship's defenses. The destroyer erupted in a massive explosion, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The coalition seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage and driving the enemy back. One by one, the enemy ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The battle was fierce, but the coalition's determination and coordination proved too much for the enemy to overcome. As the last enemy ship fled the system, a cheer erupted on the bridge of the Resolution. O'Brien allowed himself a rare smile, but his mind was already turning to the next challenge. "Excellent work, everyone," he said. "But this is just the beginning. We've won the battle, but the war is far from over. Let's make sure Epsilon Prime becomes the turning point we need." With the planet secured and the enemy fleet routed, the coalition began the process of fortifying their position and preparing for the battles to come. O'Brien knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was ready to face it head-on. For humanity, for the coalition, and for the future.